How do you like that? I mean, you went from big law to medium law to
Small
owner,
law. Yeah.
Owner operator.
I feel like I am getting away with something.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of the lawyers. You might be among them now too. A lawyer who really enjoys what they do.
I love it. I love what I do. I used to hate it. I was so bored.
I love being able to decide how I'm going to do cases, not just what cases I do.
Yeah.
I love being responsible for it. If I make a mistake, there is no one to blame but me. If I have a success,
there's reward in that. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I have a new guest here today. Super excited to talk to Jacob Weixler. Did I say it right? I got it this time.
You nailed it.
Weixler?
Yes.
Awesome.
The Russian judge even says that's amazing. Yeah.
Tell our viewers, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you?
Sure. I have my own practice. I'm a solo practitioner. Went on my own in late 2020, early 21. I mostly do federal criminal defense, civil rights, and then I have a business litigation practice also. Before out on my own, I worked with Kyle Shonicus and Billy Gibbons.
Great firm. Good guys.
Wonderful, and really gave me the tools that I needed in order to have the practice I have now. And before that, I was with two international law firms.
So you were AmLaw, right? Before that, are they on the list?
I couldn't tell you.
You couldn't tell me? All right, fair enough. I don't know if they are. I just,
I'm sure they are somewhere, but I think maybe AmLaw 100.
Okay.
So not AmLaw 10 or 50, but I was at Locke Lord and then Aiken Gump, and Aiken Gump is where I started my career and had a lot of fun doing international criminal law. To start my career.
That's a fun way to start your career. So I started my career similarly, not in large firms necessarily like that. I did spend some time at a large sort of like conglomerate PI defense firm. But, I started doing commercial litigation, usually with like an oil and gas flavor, with like a maritime flavor. And so, but I never describe it as an exciting, fun way to practice law. Like I remember getting chewed out from like my first boss because I wasn't using the AMR reporters because I was on Westlaw. And he just thought that was like poppycock. Like I should just be parked in the library because in those days, right, you had to have a library or you weren't even a law firm. And then you'd have to use the maritime reporters in the library. So that was like how I started. And so I looked you up, before you came on the show to kind of understand more about your career and your practice, which I want to talk more about. But what I liked about it is you reminded me a lot of me, and I'm self-obsessed. And so anybody who reminds me of me, I immediately gravitate towards. But because every lawyer here has the same path that I had. And we've made it sort of a cornerstone of our practice. And I think you'll understand and appreciate this. If you have not sweat out 2,000 plus hours a year, if you've never thought to yourself like, gosh, I would love to go to this conference, but there's just no way because my hours, will suffer. If you've ever worked on a Sunday for sport, like not because you're like preparing for trial. No, like pure sport to bill.
Putting in the point ones.
Right. Then you'll never truly appreciate what a blessing it is to work here. And that's not a Chopin law firm plug. That's like a plug of like, being more entrepreneurial in your practice, owning your own practice, having the autonomy. And so that's how we hire. So our hiring funnel is like we try to poach defense lawyers before they get burnt out. Like, like I can see it like they're getting there. They're getting like a little zany. We should grab them before they spoil. And so that's our model, right? And there's no secret.
That's a good model.
I like it. I like it because I learned early on I do not have the time or the inclination to teach you how to be a lawyer. I used to say that I did. It was complete bullshit. I'd be like, yeah, I'll teach you how to practice law. Absolutely. I've mentored lots of lawyers. And that might be true, but I don't actually. I don't have the time. I can teach you how to be a plaintiff's lawyer, That I can definitely do. I can teach you how to build a case. I can teach you but I can't teach you about summary judgment, man. I just need you to know that already because we're moving too fast.
I don't know that I have the time to teach anybody to be a lawyer. I do have the desire to.
You have the desire?
I mean, my first job out of college was a high school teacher. I was a high school teacher here on the West Bank.
My wife was a high school teacher out of college. She taught French in public school in New Orleans.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
I was a less desirable subject.
Public school, taught English, American Lit, and then I coached 9th grade basketball.
Okay.
On the West Bank before and after Katrina. And, I think there's a lot of teaching in our profession. I mean, I think it's... sometimes we look at the contours of our case and we're viewing them through the eyes of somebody that's been doing this for 10 plus years or someone who, really is a true believer in our case. And, there's a lot of teaching that we have to do to juries. There's a lot of teaching that we have to do to judges sometimes, depending on the court you're in.
Not ours, others.
Others. Yeah. I'd like to be able to do that with staff, and the reason I'm mentioning this is I actually just interviewed somebody for an internship, and one of the things that really stood out to me, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this, experience in the service industry, I thought it's something just rang a bell for that
100%.
Because I've been a waiter and a bar back, and ever since I was in high school. Obviously gave that up when I was in college
right.
and, was making a little more money. But having that ability to acknowledge that you have multiple things that need to be done now, but prioritizing them and kind of keeping everybody in the room happy.
Yes.
And being able to know which one is truly urgent is a great skill to have, and it's really only built through experience.
That is absolutely the one skill that can't be taught. And we do a little bit. I can coach you a little bit on it. I can give you pointers, and over time you might start, if you really are green, is how to prioritize. And then how to know when you need help, learning how to prioritize. But to your point about the service industry, 100%. We have our intake, one of my first intake specialists, she was a pastry chef. And I saw the resume, and ordinarily,
big benefit to the office too. I'm sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Why would a law firm hire this person? Well, because if you've worked on the line in a kitchen, you know how to eat shit, and if you can do that, then you can do anything, right? So
sure.
we always look when I see people with a healthy career in the service industry. You're always going to get a second glance. You're always going to get an interview, because I agree with you. It's we're very much customer service oriented. So our big shtick is motto. We don't have clients, we have customers, and I came up with that. So obviously I really like it, but I think it maybe a lot of people see that and they may think that is it's a little kitschy, but it's not, because if you've been a client, I say being a client is a lot like being a patient. So if you've ever been a patient, you never walk away from your position being a patient thinking, what great customer service that was. Wow. How nice. Maybe if you were getting a facelift in Silicon Valley, but regular people who just go to the big hospital or they go to the whatever, the Doc in the Box clinic down the street because they have a cold or something like that. You'll never walk away with a great customer service experience. And usually not. I mean, you get told where to stand, where to sit, what to wear, take your clothes off, look this way, and you get poked and prodded. And we as the consumer, we allow it because we say, well, look, we're here to get better. And we're going to put our faith in the doctor, and that the doctor, he or she are going to do whatever they need to do. Likewise, the client kind of typically, the typical client may not get the best customer service. Customers get the best experience at the right place, right? And so when I was at Starbucks, working at Starbucks in college, the rule was just say yes. Just say yes. And I always thought that really resonated with me. Someone's bitching about their coffee, just give them another cup of coffee, or they want, oh, I didn't like this, I want some, just say yes. What do you care? And so I say that a lot of times around here. I'm just say yes, whatever. What do they need? What do they need? You know, to the extent that I can do this, like to the extent there are outer limits, right? Like I'm not gonna kill your brother-in-law, right? But you know, to the best extent that I can, you know. So we're really focused on it, and so why I like people in the you know, the service industry is that they understand that if they're gonna, like, they understand how to make people happy. And that's just, I just want my clients to be happy. Like, I genuinely just want them to have a good experience.
They also don't freak out at unhappiness, you know, and that's one of the things that,
right.
You know,
I mean, not everyone's going to be happy all the time, right? I mean,
correct.
So I acknowledge that.
And I do, you know, cases where there's a lot
your clients,
of life at stake.
Like, your clients are definitely not happy, right? So my clients are injured, and that's not fun, right? But they're not going to go to jail or prison,
right?
Or like real prison, or, you know, whatever. You know, your practice is white collar mostly, or
well,
is it
so
drugs and guns?
Pretty much everybody that does federal criminal defense in New Orleans has a mixed practice of blue collar, white collar, and gray collar, right?
Right.
There's just not enough federal prosecutions in the white collar world to support an entirely white collar practice.
I've heard that recently. Another lawyer said that to me.
Those tend to be the cases that have the most you know, dense documents, intense motion practice. Those cases can be a lot of fun, but your drug and gun case can also be a lot of fun. I mean, depending on what the allegations are, how good the investigation was, where your client sits on the totem pole.
We don't have a lot of drugs and guns in New Orleans. It's unfortunate. I wish you had more drugs and guns to help you out. You know?
Yeah. There's really a dearth of any sort of. You know, you never hear about any fentanyl or meth, or definitely no meth in the outlying parishes.
No meth, no fentanyl. Now I'm like afraid to touch money. Someone was like, someone handed me like money there. I was like, oh man, good God, I don't want to get high. You know, am I getting high? No, I mean, yeah, right. It's interesting. You know, fentanyl. You know, we didn't talk about fentanyl 20 years ago, maybe in a patch form. And now it's all we talk about.
Yeah, it's definitely on the street. It's definitely in things that people take that they don't know it's in there. If they buy it on the street, it's dangerous stuff. There's no question about that. But also, so is methamphetamine. I mean, one of the things that you know, in my practice, I have to have a lot of compassion for people that make mistakes. You know, I have clients that make horrible mistakes, and they're trying to reckon with it. They might be at a place where they're ready to, you know, reckon with it. Or they might be in a place where they're still in denial. Or they could be completely innocent and misunderstood. There's a broad spectrum, right? But
completely guilty and still deserving the best possible representation.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And so people miss that because that's the one nugget non-lawyers can't wrap their head around, right? So they need the story to read. Innocent man gets acquitted. They can't. It's very difficult for the average person, I think, to think, well, yeah, like there's no question, like he did a horrible thing.
Yeah.
But what separates us from maybe other countries and other, you know, societies is that we're still going to give this person great representation, and we're going to make sure, if they are convicted, that it's done the right way. We're going to do it the right way.
And in some cases,
because next time it could be you or me, right?
Sure. And you know, it's a necessity in a society that actually values individual rights, that you have those sorts of safeguards. And you know, not to get too soapboxy on it, but you know, I think also an important part of that is living in a society that actually gives people second chances. You know, one of the probably the thing that turned me into a criminal defense lawyer was in law school. I was a part of a law clinic where we exonerated somebody, and
that's awesome. Yeah.
And it wasn't so much the professional success of it as it was, you know, the bond that you form with a team when you do that is really something to behold. It's like it's like a sports team that wins a championship or something.
Yeah, sure.
But also the bond that you have with your client is something that you just never forget, because, you know, typically you're the person that believes in them when others have written them off. Sometimes even family members have written them off.
Yeah, but there's a sentiment that if you've been arrested, you're guilty.
Right.
People don't even know that they're saying it or thinking it, but they
Or,
are.
If you were convicted on evidence that was available to the state in 1979, you're guilty forever.
Right.
In that case, it was really fingerprint evidence that was not analyzed significantly enough to where it was obvious who committed the crime, and it wasn't my client. But also, what was most interesting about that case is, victory is not the end, right? So the judge looks at us and says, "Okay, well, go pick him up." So he was going to be released from custody later that day. He hasn't been out in 30 years. He's got one family member he keeps in touch with, and so we have to go pick him up. Okay. And it was like being a part of opening a time capsule. Right?
I'm sure. Like there's iPhones now, so you should know about this.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. We're sitting at. I wanted to get him a steak, right? So we're looking for.
That's what I wanted to hear. I'm so glad you're going. Like I wanted to hear. I was like, do you go out? Like,
of course,
yeah,
right?
Okay,
you have to.
You're good. Yeah,
you have to. I wanted to get him a steak, but in this place, this was like on a Wednesday morning, and it was, in a place where prisons are, so not,
not the best steak.
Not a huge population, not a big populated place.
Maybe like a breakfast steak, maybe like a Waffle House steak.
Yeah, we're not going to someplace fancy. The only place open was Chili's. Go to Chili's, and I'm thinking, is this guy going to be kind of disappointed that his lawyer took him to Chili's? He walks in, he's blown away.
Yeah.
Right? Flat screen TVs, not a thing when he went in.
Right.
Probably never, in his case, as a kid living in poverty,
Sure.
didn't really order off a menu much probably before going into prison. So it was to watch him experiencing a modern restaurant for the first time was pretty interesting.
Yeah, maybe in some ways that's actually like the best place to go, right? Maybe it's like they appreciated more of like that big, chain, something we may take for granted.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't want to go to Chili's.
But when you also think of like how things are described on a menu today,
right.
Like it was like Angus burger on a ciabatta roll with
the description,
fired
every ingredient known to mankind. We're like hand cracked black peppercorns.
Yeah, he just handed
Himalayan salt that's been crusted onto the protein source. There's like salt and pepper. All right, got it.
Yeah. And it could be overwhelming for, average people who've, been out of prison in the last 30 years. So, and then when he wanted to see a picture of a certain family member, one of the family members who joined us had it on his phone. And he said, "What are you handing me here?" And it was a phone with a, and so he was like, "I don't know about all this," and I, thought about handing him, my phone to kind of show him, oh, look, you can get TV, you can get, I can see every NBA score.
Let's talk about OTT
today.
For a second. Yeah. Watch this.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like Shawshank, right? That's like the kind of the idea, right? You're in for 30 years. 30 years ago, like Pearl Jam was playing.
Sure.
And like hot, right?
But then I've also had clients, I had a client who actually just recently passed, who was so since I've been in Louisiana, I've done 2 cases on behalf of people that were convicted of crimes as juveniles and sentenced to life without parole.
I didn't realize you could do that.
You can't anymore.
I don't do criminal work. So
you can't anymore, thanks to...
Listen, if I'm representing you on a criminal case, understand this, you're going to prison. And not like jail, like you're going to prison. Because I don't know anything about criminal law. I'm not. I took the criminal law class. I passed the bar, in 2 states. But I don't do criminal. There are some guys here that do criminal work. I don't do criminal work. I did one thing. It was like a possession for marijuana, and I wasn't sure who. I was like, who knew more about it? I was like, do I stand here? And my client's like, yeah, I think you stand there, and then like I stand here, and then you say like not guilty. I'm like, we're going to get this.
Sir,
you're like, we got this.
Sir, you're standing in the jury box.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, because it's just completely different than a civil practice.
The judge is like, stop wearing my robe.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing? Are you chewing gum? And they're like, I thought it was okay. No, I mean, I just don't do criminal work. So,
Yeah, so there are 2 Supreme Court cases on it that came down in the 2010s.
Okay.
That basically said you can't sentence a juvenile to life without parole unless they are basically the worst of the worst, unless they have like irredeemable character, and that's not going to be the case in most cases. And so in 2 of the cases that I had here, there was no chance that these people were going to be, if resentenced, be sentenced to life without parole because they had shown their character. I mean, they were convicted one was convicted in the late 70s, one was convicted in the early 90s. They had been in prison and had, in one case, the warden came to testify on their behalf as to what a high character person this was. In the other case, this guy, his name is John Seary, he actually just recently passed. He had reached such a high level of trust within the state prison system that he was, when I went to go visit him the first time, I was blown away because I went to the gates and I expected a call box or something and nothing worked. So I just opened the gate and walked in, and there was, I said, "Where's John?" And they said, "Oh, well, we don't know. We'll figure out where he is." And, he was just wearing khakis and a polo shirt. He was basically like an employee of the state police. And, he had a car. They sent him to Walmart on runs. He had been a bartender at the governor's mansion.
Okay.
He had a high level of freedom or a high level of trust. Yeah. Yeah. It was, he had been the bartender at the governor's mansion, I think, under Jindal. But anyways, yeah. So these are people that have demonstrated that they can be trusted.
Right.
So if not for those Supreme Court cases, they'd still be behind bars for life. And so on resentencing, the goal is to show that they are of high character, to introduce all the things that they've done since they've been in, that this is you convicted a 16-year-old kid who was confused and made a horrible mistake, right? Because in both these cases, guilt was not in question. In one case, the client was the shooter and 2 people were killed. The question instead is this person, deserving of a second chance, and have they demonstrated that they are of a redeemable character? And in both cases, we were successful and able to get them out, and both had, no issues afterwards.
No, I'm not surprised to hear that. It's juvenile crime is an issue for Southeast Louisiana right now, because so much of our crime right now is being committed by juveniles. Mm-hmm. It's really quite alarming. It's not alarming. It's terrifying, actually. If I would be more frightened of a 14-year-old walking down the street than I would of like a 40-year-old. Like a 40-year-old, we can look at each other and be like, "I'm not going to shoot you," and he's like, "I'm not going to shoot you either." I'm like, "All right, I'll see you later."
I think we can both admit that 14-year-old versions of ourselves would be quite terrifying to us.
Yeah, like
too,
I was
right?
kind of like a nerdy 14-year-old. Like I was being groomed to have a nerdy, adulthood and just being like a lawyer, So the concept's like a little foreign to me. But I also came from a very privileged background. I don't make any bones about it, right? I had my father was a lawyer, my mother was a lawyer, and so I had the benefit of going to good schools and in a nice house, and
plenty of things to keep your time occupied.
Right. So I don't fault, necessarily, it's hard for me to say, well, like, I wasn't that way. Well, no shit, Justin. Had you really been that way, you probably, you should be locked up, because you had every advantage known to mankind, whereas a lot of these kids really don't. They're really, New Orleans is the classic land of haves and have-nots, and the ones that have not really just have nothing. Sure.
But there's also immense potential in those communities. I mean, I saw when I was teaching. All people
have immense potential too. I mean, like, we're talking human beings
that
they love and they have compassion, right? And they have, they have fear just like we do. And they want the same things that we want. What they lack is a support, you know, mentorship, guidance, decent education in a lot of instances. You know, and you know, we can go on and on, but you know, I think that you know, it's if you're going to be, New Orleans is just not a town to grow up dirt poor in my opinion. Yeah, I think it's a hard place.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree there.
Yeah, right. Well, so I'm curious to hear. So you came to New Orleans to teach. Is that how did you find your way here?
Yeah, so I had an uncle here growing
Okay.
up. He was in the movie business, the not the Hollywood South movie business, the movie distribution business.
Okay.
And so I was always fascinated with the place. You know, visited, loved it, and then I did Teach for America. I really only wanted to come here and teach for America. I wanted to be somewhere in the South. I'm from the South. So yeah, came down here, taught with TFA, then met my wife here. She was a teacher at a rival high school, and then we decided to go to grad school, went to the University of Michigan for grad school, then jobs out in D.C. for the first 5 years of my career, and then my wife, she's a professor at Tulane, so we came back in 2013 or 14. So I've been
And then
back.
that's that. And then once you're here, we kind of keep you here. We don't like to see people leave.
I'm 10 toes down. I can't leave.
Now, a lot of people they'll leave and then they won't come back. And we understand. It's New Orleans. It's like that can happen. We lose them sometimes. But once they come back, like you're toast. Like I wasn't planning on coming back to New Orleans. I went to college in Dallas. I lived in Dallas for a year. But I was like, well, I'm going to go back to New Orleans to go to law school. I'm just going to law school. I'm not putting down any roots. You know, and then I came back, and then I went to law school, and then I matriculated to a defense firm, and then and then I met my wife. And then
once you start a family here, it's.
And I'm just like,
the thing I love,
even if I wanted to move, I don't think I could.
Yeah, well, the thing I love about it here is that, you know, and I tell people from out of town, you know, there's no question it's a challenging place to live, but, you know, it has a lot of the amenities that I loved about being in a big city, right?
Right.
Nearby an airport, can go see a professional sports game, can go see a Broadway play, you know, all those things.
Good restaurants.
Way more Beard Award winners than we have any business having with a population of 450,000 people, right? But when I go to a park or a grocery store or something, odds are that I'm running into somebody I know, like it's a small town. And sure. I really enjoy that part of the community is that, you know, especially coming in as a, you know, relative outsider, not having done law school here, having lived here before, but, you know, having done law school somewhere else and been a part of a different legal market and then coming in here, it really didn't take long for me to start to get to know people and get to know, you know, who was doing what work and you know, a lot of that's just a credit to the market here that
we just have a small community, you know, that just really doesn't exist in other communities. Like I'm licensed practice in Texas. At this point, if someone were to hand me a killer case in Dallas, I would be miserable, right? I mean, like I like practicing law in Southeast Louisiana and Southwest Louisiana too, for the record. I like the guys in Lafayette too. And,
I take cases in Lafayette, Shreveport, because they're federal courts there,
right?
And I, you know, having kind of a specialty and not specialty, but a focus on federal work. You know, I tend to do work around the state.
But the difference in the community and the bar, right? Not just the central community, but the legal community is it's like night and day. So I always say like New York, I think would be a fun place in your 20s. Yeah. But you know,
DC was a great place in my late 20s.
It's like a great place in your 20s, but it may not be. It's you know, it's not as easy, right, as the New Orleans, right? New Orleans is just easy. Like how long does it take you? Where's your office?
Oh, it's less than 5-minute drive from my home.
I only put even when we drive to the beach or I drive to Arkansas, we take trips. I mean, I still only put like 8,000 miles on my car a year, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, once upon a time, before I went to law school and I needed a job, and so I started selling cars in Dallas.
Oh, wow.
Because it was during the .com bust of 2002, right?
Yeah.
So the Bennigans is getting boarded up. So if you live in a city like Dallas,
rest in peace, Bennigans,
right? They were boarding up Bennigans. That's when you know you're fucked. Because you can't even get a Monte Cristo in this town. And so everything's going out of business. We couldn't, people want cars. It's not hard to sell a car.
What were you selling?
Chevys,
Okay.
right? So if you can't sell a Chevy in Texas, like you're in a pickle.
Yeah.
And the deal is you can sell a Chevy, just no one could buy them. No one could get financing. And so that's when they started with 0% financing for the first time. They started doing all these things. But, it was, well, I forgot where I was going with that thought. It's already gone. It doesn't matter. The point is, so the average driver in Texas puts a minimum of 15,000 miles on their car. So like New Orleans is just like an easy place to
Do you ever, I don't know who your car insurer is, but do you ever get those calls from the insurance company where they're like, hey, you reported that you only drove 2,500 miles last year in this vehicle. Are you sure about that?
Are you sure? That seems a little light.
Listen, I could show you pictures on my phone of the odometer.
Right.
You know, it's
and move it to a garage policy.
Yeah,
right?
and New Orleans is a great place for an electric bike.
Yeah, like one of our guys here has a Vespa, which I've really been meaning to like pick on him about, but when he told me that,
you're just jealous.
I could see in his face he wasn't emotionally ready to be made fun of, and so I was gonna let it marinate, give it like a few weeks. And then when he was least expecting, just like get him like a little zinger about like his Vespa. But he'd probably be like, yeah, and it's like, he loves it. You could tell he's like committed to the Vespa. And so, yeah, I agree.
It's a lifestyle choice, really.
It is a lifestyle choice. We've got a few e-bikers, I think, in this office. And we got some younger folk around here that really like that.
I used to bike to work in D.C. when I was, and I like restored this like cool mid-'80s Peugeot bike and, felt like I was all,
right
of the times, and now I have like an electric cruiser bike with a kid seat on the back.
Yeah, with the kid seat.
It's the perfect Mardi Gras dad mobile.
Yeah. No, I get that. I can't bike to work. Well, one, it's a little far from me. I could take the Greenway, I suppose. It's a little scary. But I would just be like a mess. Like I would walk in and be like, oh.
What's amazing though with the electric bike is because you're exerting less energy, the air
kind of cools you off.
It's actually cooler than taking a car. Sometimes.
How fast do they go?
Mine can get up to 20, and on a bike, it feels like you're going.
Now, I've not used one. Are you pedaling it to 20 miles an hour with like assistance?
So I think
you're just sitting on it.
There are different types,
okay.
But pedal assistive is most of these e-bikes, meaning you have to pedal, but it's like if you had an exercise bike that you put on the lowest setting. There's no resistance.
So like my bike, if I'm going 20 miles an hour, like I'm not doing it for a prolonged. But like the Peloton says I can go 20 miles an hour, but I know that it's full of shit. Like I've been on a real bike. I'm like, I appreciate it. Like I appreciate you telling me that I'm going 20 miles an hour right now. But I think we both know that's not true. I know we're both about 14, right? Okay.
I did an unscientific comparison where I actually biked to court one day in the summer and drove to court, just kind of checked in.
Yeah,
it's like, how sweaty am I? Right. Less sweaty from the bike.
Little beta testing. Yeah, I drive. In the summer, if I got to go to court, and it's like, federal court is across the street. So if I'm going to federal court, like I'm not fooling around. But if I'm going to state court, I might drive. I might just be like, well, I won't go to the office and then walk to the courthouse. I will just drive to the courthouse and then drive to the office. Otherwise, I'm just like a complete sweaty mess.
Isn't the heat the great equalizer though? Like, you could spend an hour getting ready or 5 minutes getting ready.
It doesn't matter.
And you would look the
same.
same.
And it doesn't matter like if you're fit or if you're not fit. Right. It's like if you're in August in New Orleans, I don't care how many triathlons or Ironman or marathons you've done, you're just as miserable as
certainly
the sort of the couch person. So well, look, I'm getting to this thing. So
the wrap up.
I talked too much again. I really appreciate you coming on, though. It was great meeting with you and hearing about your practice. So how is it? You were a solo practitioner. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I already said we were wrapping up, but I've changed my mind because I didn't get to hear about this. I started as a solo practitioner. Okay. So it was me and like my home office with like a cup of coffee and my boxers being like, today, I'm a solo practitioner.
Going to Office Depot.
Exactly.
I'm going to pick out some envelopes.
Exactly. Like I'm going to go buy the printer that I can afford, and stuff like that. So how do you like that? I mean, you went from big law to medium law to
Small
owner,
law. Yeah.
Owner operator.
I feel like I am getting away with something.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of the lawyers. You might be among them now too. A lawyer who really enjoys what they do.
I love it. I love what I do. I used to hate it. I was so bored.
I love being able to decide how I'm going to do cases, not just what cases I do.
Yeah.
I love being responsible for it. If I make a mistake, there is no one to blame but me. If I have a success,
there's reward in that,
yeah.
If not financial reward. I mean, there's
that
reward
too.
in yourself and knowing that I've gotten a result.
Sure.
My work is geared towards a certain result. I'm not drafting memos because I have an insurance company willing to pay for it.
Right.
Right. I mean, if I'm researching, it's because I really need to figure this out. I want to make sure I got this just right.
Yeah. And figuring out how to as a criminal practitioner, figuring out how to structure your fees to where you can just put the money to the side and then say, okay, how are we going to? Okay, my fee is taken care of. I'm comfortable. I'm just putting that out of my mind now. Now we're going. We're fighting your case.
Yeah.
And I think clients really appreciate that too. Just that being able to have that focus. But yeah, I think that there's never a bigger swing in general world and political view than between a big firm associate turned solo practitioner, because the firm associate might be saying things like, well, actually BP does a lot of good for the community, and
right.
And then the solo practitioner, newly minted solo practitioner is like, brothers of the proletariat, let's rise up.
Yeah.
It's really,
I mean, you get to really
unchain
help
yourselves.
people,
yes, right.
And do good in the community.
Yeah.
And with a straight face, right? So it's you're not full of it either. Are you planning to grow, or do you like what you're? So I grew, but it wasn't necessarily. I always knew I didn't want to be solo. Mm-hmm. I knew that. I didn't. Everyone's like, well, did you always intend to grow like this? No, I never did I imagine we would be 10 lawyers looking to hire 2 more, and expanding. And that sort of gradually evolved, over time.
So I'm of two minds about it. I got to be honest. I need to expand because I think that there's more people out there that need, not to be full of myself, but more people out there that need our services than I can manage.
Right.
I don't want to do that with overhead. I want to do it with partnership. Mm-hmm. But, and I really love the, kind of the community that we have of solo practitioners who I work with. I was just telling somebody, it's nice when a case comes in and I can say, okay, well, if it's this type of case and it gets beyond the work of a solo, or if it's just a case where I want to kind of share the risk and also share the experience, I'm calling this person and we're going to join together. We're going to join forces on this one.
Yeah.
But there's other times where that doesn't work out because they have another case that they're super busy on or something like that. So, I work with a group of, kind of a circle of other solos it's been successful so far. I would love to take on a partner just because I think as a 2-lawyer shop and potentially a 3-lawyer shop maybe, we would have the capacity to address the need.
Yeah, I mean, having that collegiate atmosphere was a major shift in the firm. So I remember the first lawyer, I had associates, but I remember the first lawyer that I brought on that really was a fully trained lawyer. Mm-hmm. And, within 6 months of him joining, I could already see things were totally changing for the better. And so, and we could just spitball all day long. So we can distill the issues and come up with the best possible solution, rather.
Well, and
you do that as a solo practitioner too, but it's nice to have a soundboard.
Absolutely,
right?
100%, and that's why I'll give a shout out to Kristen Amon, who I am co-counsel with currently on a civil rights case. I co-counseled with her on a business lit case recently, and I can kind of go. I can go down a rabbit hole in terms of like, okay, should we do X, Y, or Z, or is that too much? Is that too little? And just having somebody there who you trust, who can kind of govern that conversation or who can give you feedback on it, it is invaluable. And it saves you time, too.
Yes.
Because otherwise you'd end up hand-wringing about it for another day and then maybe drafting it and then putting it in the trash can.
Afterwards. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And, sometimes I still do that. On one thing recently, I remember I drafted 2 versions of it and sent it to my co-counsel and said,
which one do you like
better?
Which
one do you like better? And one was, one was in one direction and one was in the other. And just being able to have an answer to that, to then put that down for a second, go help somebody else while, they try to, unwind my insane thoughts. It's just
fun.
Efficient. Yeah.
And it makes the practice fun. It turns the job and the practice and the profession of what you're doing into something else that's like, we have like a little family here, we have fun and we, well,
it's based on, and also it being based on, instead of, a hierarchy,
right?
Instead being based on true collegiality,
sure.
Right? So this is,
I'm
not here to sit in judgment.
My lawyers instruct me on law all the time. Like, I don't know the answer on everything,
right.
Especially not now. I've been out, 17 years, and so the law keeps changing, and and so
they got to stop that.
Right.
It should just be the way that we
pick
we
one,
learned it,
and then we'll just whatever it is, but then we're going to stick to that,
yeah.
Right? And then don't change the bill. When they changed the federal rules in like 09 or 10, that really threw me for a loop, because I was already out of law school, and my wife, she's younger than me, and so she's like, they don't. That's not the standard. And I'm like, the hell it isn't. Like I would even argue with her. She's like, that's not the standard. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go read up on this then and go.
Well, there are lawyers who deliberately choose not to
follow
the updates,
just conveniently ignore. No, that's why we have a good team. I don't have to worry about it. They'll instruct me on that. So, well, hey, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
That was wonderful.
Tell our viewers where they can find you.
Sure. It is www.weixlerlaw.com, and that is WEIX as an X-ray. LERLAW.com.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show. It was great meeting you.
Yeah.
Good
nice
luck.
to see you, Justin.
Thanks. Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.